welcome everyone to the How to Hire as a Manager session. My name is Judy Ty Kennedy. I'm the Director of HR at Chiaro Brands Inc. I'm a seasoned HR professional. I've got over 15 years in a number of different industries, from oil and gas to pulp and paper, energy, and now in the cannabis space. I'm very passionate about leadership development. So, some might be wondering why I'm here today, but I'd love to empower you guys to be better leaders and giving you some of the knowledge and skills that I've learned about hiring over the years, so that it can help you be effective leaders and hopefully helping you make the best hires for your teams as well. A little personal side note about me is I'm an avid gym goer. Running is my thing. I do like to run, and I have two wonderful dogs, two wonderful pit bulls at home. Just a little bit about myself. My hopes for the learning objective today is to really help you understand the steps of the process, especially if you're a brand new leader. Get familiar with the types of interviews and maybe the types of questions and formats that you're going to ask. And then ultimately, how do you choose the right person? So we'll kind of talk through some of those details. So if you're like most managers, this emoji kind of tells it all, and I got that feeling from a lot of you there, is that you're like, help, you want to make the right decision, you want to make it the right hire for your company, for your team, you want to make sure they stay. So that this is very common feelings that you feel, especially if you don't do hiring as often. The question you're probably asking is, what is my role as a manager in the hiring process? And so as we walk through, the process is really, hopefully you'll have somebody at your company, HR contact or recruiter, that kind of helps you with that process, right? They help kind of drive how to post the position, where to post it, where to get the most selection, how to conduct interviews. They're probably going to talk you through some of those things. A lot of times leaders have questions for me about, how much do I pay for this position? Or, what's the salary range? So that's usually things that your HR team can help you out with, or a recruiter, external recruiter that you're working with. It's important that you as a hiring manager, you're the subject matter expert, right? So what you should come to the table with is really understanding, what is it that you want this person to do? What is it that you have the need for? The technical skills that you need for this role, for them to be successful. You know the team very well, you can assess the team fit, and also just understand who could be a really good culture add as well for your team. We're going to walk through 7 parts to the hiring process. And so the process starts with deciding what you want and who. You're going to post the position, maybe not you, but your team is going to post the position, or company HR. We're going to go through shortlisting candidates. What does that look like? How do you conduct any interviews? And then ultimately, when you're ready to make a decision, how do you multiple candidates? We'll talk through some of the background checks and reference checks, and then what are some of the best practices to making the offer. So the first part we'll start off with is deciding what you want and who. If we break it down on what you want, you really want to think about it from the responsibility. So what is it from a day-to-day perspective that you want to outline that this person will be doing? So obviously it comes with a need, right? You have to kind of figure out what are just top 10 even bullet points of what are the things that they're going to be working on, whether it be key projects, things that they're responsible for on a day-to-day basis. The level of the job is really important too, because you want to understand, do you need someone at the support level? Do they need to be a coordinator, or are you looking for someone to manage other people as well? So in that case, what's the title you're looking for of the job? Because that will support what they're actually doing. And then span of control is also a good thing to really think about, is the decision-making abilities of the role. So, are you expecting this person to just support something versus create it? Or is that something that you're going to do as, their leader? So deciphering between what is the limits of, what you want this role to be accountable for, and what they can have control over making decisions on. The next piece is the deciding who you want. And I think sometimes for leaders, this can be very tricky. So the great thing is that you'll have support from your HR team or an external recruiter if you're not too sure. But you really want to break it down to four components. The first one is education and training. Likely you can, you'll fees or certifications that this person you might want them to have. The experience is a big piece. Where would you have liked them to work at before, whether it be in different companies or different roles. So if you can get an idea of, it would be great if someone came in with this type of experience that would fit for what we're looking for here. Competencies is more of those technical, hard, soft skills, leadership skills, how they deal with the team. Is it around communication, teamwork, those kind of skills. And then the knowledge piece is any regulations that they need to know as part of their role, industry practices, or any kind of processes that would be helpful for them to know just in being part of the role. So likely if you haven't done too much hiring, it might get tricky, but a good tip from how I kind of break these down is I like to sometimes look through Google too, just to see how people break down, what they're looking for. So you have this big list of what you want someone to do, and you have a list of components that you want this person to have as well as part of their background. The important thing is that you actually start looking at the must-haves versus the nice-to-haves. And so the must-haves, as an example, I kind of put together this example as a lawyer for a cannabis company. The must-haves are things that you can't negotiate on, right? You actually have to have them for the role, and you might want to pick 3 things of the list that you've created. So some of the essentials for this lawyer would be, they obviously have to have had passed the bar, so I know that they're a lawyer. I want someone who's been on a corporate counsel before, so they've been, doing this type of work at other companies. And because we're also a public company, we need them to have that public industry knowledge. And so those were the must-haves for the lawyer. But the nice-to-haves are things that, it'd be great if they had it, but it's something that you're willing to it's not deal breakers to say. So the nice-to-have is they've worked in cannabis before. That would be great. A lot of times people say, they have to have worked within the same industry, but a lot of industry knowledge can be trained as well. So same thing with cannabis, you can learn as you go. I love dogs personally, but so it's definitely nice to have if they love dogs as well, because we have dogs in our office, and we also use Google Suites at my company. So nice to have if they have that experience. If they don't, we can learn it. So moving on to the second step is posting the position. Now this step is really not so much of a manager's role, because likely your HR contact or recruiter will know where to post it to get the most traction and to give you some ideas of where to get the bigger pool of the talents to apply. But where best practice is as a hiring manager, if you could actually help by sharing the posting with your networks, telling your coworkers or other friends or family members about it, just to get some traction on referrals. Referrals is a really great way to get more candidates interested. And you can always use a Wimdy ask as well to reach out to your networks. So jumping on to shortlisting candidates, to give you an idea of what a recruiter, typically their role is, and hopefully you guys have some support from, your company HR or an external recruiter, is that the objective is that, you'll get about 100 resumes that come in, and we usually dwindle it down and shortlist to about 10. And these are kind of ideal, not always the case, but sometimes ideal numbers. And then you'll get on to phone screen about 3 to 5 people. At the end, you'll interview maybe 2 to 3, and you'll end up with. So it's important that when you're looking at 100 resumes, you want to kind of, spend at least 30 seconds to 2 minutes on a resume if that was in your role that you have that many resumes to look at. A great way is to really just look for keywords. You have your list of must-haves and your nice-to-have. So those are the kind of top things that you're going to look for on their resume. And their resume really is going to help you just take a look at what kind of technical skills they have. So obviously you can't sort of assess what kind of their personality or how they deal with certain situations. It's really just to make sure, okay, they have a good level of technical skills and we think they can do, they would be a good fit for the role. So caution, watch out for biases. This is really when these biases can creep up on you. The one I want to talk about today is perception bias, which is a tendency to form stereotypes and assumptions based on certain groups. So at this point, when you're doing resumes reviewing resumes, you want to ask yourself, do you have certain stereotypes about who usually does these roles or holds these roles, who normally does it, whether it's like male or female. You kind of want to be aware of your own biases in understanding that before you get into, shortlisting the resumes and looking at them more closely. So you want to be able to find an objective way to really look at your must-haves. So we get into the interviewing stage now. You've shortlisted candidates. You've probably got a couple of them. There's several types of interview formats, but the ones I'm going to talk through today is phone screens. So phone screens is, usually a 30-minute conversation just to get to know you better between you and the recruiter. Those usually happen when at the very beginning, just to get a gauge on your interest and things like salary expectations and make sure that there's alignment before you move on to a full-on interview. You'll see technical skills tests sometimes. I know, earlier in my career where, if I was in an administrative job, a lot of times you see like typing tests or computer tests just to understand people's level of proficiency with computers. One-on-one interviews, a lot of you mentioned that. So those are great ways to just really get to know the person and, understand their passions and their just their background and experience. Panel interviews are common too. It's a great way to understand, very intimidating because, you probably have 3 or 4 folks interviewing at the same time, but a great way to get what you need within a short amount of time and, less interviews. There's also role playing. Sometimes you have to do, you can do, mock interviews where you play different roles and see how they react to situations. And then there's presentation styles where you might have to present something or you have a portfolio or something that you want to walk someone through. So when deciding what type of interview format to use, it really depends on the skill sets that you're looking for. It's great to use a combination of them, but you have to look at what makes sense for you to assess how you think this person would be able to, show their capabilities and things like that. So once you've figured out the interview format, there are 4 main types of interview questions that you want to ask within your interview. Technical experience, hypothetical situations, behavioral questions, and then last is interest and motivation. So we're going to talk about the technical experience. This is really important to ask as a hiring manager so that you understand their level of proficiency with the things that you want to get them to do, right? So you can get sometimes, especially if you're looking for software developers or someone, a very technical role, you can get in there and start asking them, okay, so how would you, walk me through, how would you do this coding, or what's been your approach with this kind of process? So it's a great way to just understand how someone would do it. What you're listening for is their level of knowledge, what's their experience with it, and then how well or how thorough were they in walking you through that approach or the process that they've outlined. The next question is hypothetical situations. So they're really good for asking candidates who might not have had this experience that you can tell on their resume. You might want to come up with a scenario and sort of ask them how they would deal with that situation. So It might be something that's happening with your company at the moment, and you want to know how they would approach it from their perspective. So, walk me through how you would remove, conflict between two coworkers, or we have this coworker who's, obviously you don't want to say that, but you want to give an example of perhaps a situation that they have to tell you how they're going to work around it. What you're listening for is obviously their approach. Does it align with your values, the values of the company? Do they understand the risk of the approach? And then ultimately, is there anything that you're hearing that might not sit well with you? I always say that hiring, it always feels a little scary because you want to hire the right person, you want to make the right move, but you always have to go with your gut feeling. And that's what I always tell my team and hiring managers that I talk to. You got to go with your gut feeling. If something feels off, you have to question it. The third type of questions is behavioral questions. So behavioral questions are really geared towards past performance. So a lot of times people ask these questions because they believe past performance is a good indicator for future performance. So you want to draw back into their resume and really ask them questions about when they've had an experience with, this situation. And you'd hope that this situation they've already had the experience with, but tell me about a time you've had a conflict with another employee. How did you deal with it? Tell me about a time where you were able to communicate in front of a large team. How did that go? What was the result? And so what you're listening for is, I like to call, maybe some of you might have heard as well, this methodology, but it's called the STAR approach. So it stands for explain the situation, tell me about the task, what was the action that you took, and what was the result. And you want to ask it in the way that the candidates explain that to you, so that you get the full picture of what happened in that scenario. It's a good way to probe into it, because as they explain and get very specific on their situation, you can say, hey, did you do this alone? Were you with a team who put this together? Were you successful? Was there something that you learned from the result of it, even if you weren't able to be successful? So it's a good way to kind of probe into that. And then the last set of interview questions is called interest and motivation questions, which sometimes I think hiring leaders forget to ask. They ask a lot of the technical questions. They assess that the candidate has, everything that they have to be able to do this job. But what you really want to hear for is, how happy would this person be in this role? So by understanding that, where do they want to be in the next couple of years? What are they looking for in this role? What made them interested in the company in general? Because you want to make sure that as much as it's a fit for you, it's a fit for them as well. And you're listening for, how excited they are. You're listening for what they're looking for. I think I talked about this, but you want to kind of get an understanding of this is something that they're excited about for too, because ultimately having somebody hungry and eager and excited is I think that's the best type of hire that you can make. So living in Canada, questions not to ask. There are a number of protected classes as part of our human rights law. And so the code was, the purpose of the code is to protect yourself, others, candidates from discrimination and harassment. A lot of times, things that leaders can ask are not intentional. They don't mean to kind of talk about these things, but I've had a lot of managers ask, like, oh, and just in conversation, like, oh, are you married, or do you have kids? Because we're talking about the weekend, and it ends up being one of those things where it's like, no, don't answer that. We don't want to be asking that at this point. So you want to be careful of what you ask in this, if it's one of these protected classes. Okay, so you've done your interviews. You probably have a couple of candidates that you interviewed, and now you're thinking, how do I assess these candidates? So the best approach that might be a helpful tool for you is to come up with a little bit of a rating scheme. Think about your must-haves and your nice-to-haves, and really consider 3 areas that are going to be important for this role. So I like to break it down to hard skills, which is basically like the technical job-specific skills. And then the soft skills are sort of those leadership skills, interpersonal skills. And then the third one is the values alignment. So how are they aligned to your values, to the values of the company? How can they be a culture add? As an example, we'll start off with a sales manager. So breaking that down, the hard skills are some of the B2B sales that we want them to have. Solution selling, that's very important for a sales manager to have. And negotiation, we want them to be able to negotiate as part of their selling. So some of the soft skills that we also think is important is communication, relationship building, and then the values alignment is that although they're working a lot of times alone, we want them to be a team player. We want them to get along with the rest of the team and really consider that. So I'm going to give you an example. We have candidate A, and if we're going to rate them from 1 to 5, 5 being the best, the first candidate, we're going to score them at 4 to 5 because they do have great B2B sales. But when we talk about their solution selling, this candidate might have more of a values-based selling. So they might not be aligned with the solution selling just of yet in what you could assess of them. So you've rated them a little bit lower. Negotiation skills, really great. They can close the deal. They're very confident. They're able to talk very well, have great communication skills. 3 out of 5 for relationship building. Team player, maybe you didn't get a chance to assess that too much, but they might be someone who steps over toes, and that's what you've kind of gauged from some of the answers that they've been giving. So that's candidate A. And then you have candidate B, who has very similar B2B sales, and their solution selling experience is great. So you've rated them 5 out of 5. You get down to negotiation, they seem a bit soft. They might not be able to close the deal as quick. They might be they might be one of those folks where they'll walk away from it versus coming back and coming up with some new options. So you've rated them a little bit lower. Communication skills you thought were great, relationship building great. They're fantastic team player. So I'm going to ask you, and if you could use the chat, out of candidate A and B, who would you hire? So the answer is, it really depends. And I say that because it's exactly one of the answers that came up, that it really depends on what you're looking for and the company that you're bringing them into. Obviously, the team player is a little bit of a concern. You want all your people that you hire to be a great team player. So you'll think about it in that regard. And you also have to think about, what are some things that you can coach and mentor them on as well, right? So even though they might not have it today, is it something that you're willing to help them get to the next steps with? So great thinking around that. So next slide. Again, watch out for your biases as we are talking through this. So when you are assessing candidates, there's a couple of biases that can come up, but the first one that I want to talk about is the affinity bias, and that's most known as the just like me bias. So, oftentimes you might say, oh, well, this person would do it this way, and that's not how I would do it. But that might not be the right approach, because how you would do it would be maybe different than how somebody else would do it, and perhaps they still could do the job, even if they did it a different way. So having similarities with the candidate is great, but you also have to be aware of how that's influencing your decision to choose somebody. And then there's the halo and horn effect. So, did the person come in, the halo effect, meaning that did the person come in and they, had a really great first impression. Maybe they said they brought you some cookies, and from that point on, you've been very kind of excited because you think that, they're very thoughtful. Was it just one thing that they've done that made it a very positive experience? Or the horn effect is the opposite. Did they do one thing that was maybe a very negative thing, and from there you couldn't sort of shake whether this candidate would be a good fit or not? You have to sort of look at that situation and think about if you've made any of the assessments based on these biases. So you get down to selecting a couple of candidates, and now you've made your decision. I'm probably going to go with this one candidate A or candidate B, and you get on to reference checks and background checks. So reference checks and background checks are predominantly for validating the decision that you made. You don't really want to be doing reference checks and background checks for multiple candidates. It's usually for a finalist that you just want to basically validate, okay, these are the things that you've learned about them. Can you call some references to basically understand a little bit more, or to either confirm that this is what they've done and that there aren't any red flags. So oftentimes when we do references, and your HR team or contact usually takes this on, but when you do references, sometimes it's great to even ask, how do I keep this candidate motivated? Or what's been your experience with keeping them engaged? And what do you think I would need to do to be successful as their leader? So it gives you good information about the candidate from someone else's perspective that you can take on as you hire that person, and perhaps for development purposes too. So making the offer, you've done your reference checks, they have a great glowing background, and you're ready to make an offer to someone. Usually, your team, depending on the company that you work for, either you do it yourself or you have an HR person that presents the offer. But best practices, I like to, if you get an opportunity to be able to present the offer, I really like that the leader has a touch point to even just say, hey, great job on the interview. We really enjoyed meeting you. You are our final candidate and we'd like to make you an offer, right? And it kind of just closes the deal and saying like, we chose you and here's why. So I often say, if anyone's going to make the offer to a candidate, it's best to have them on a call or somewhere in person where you can just have that one-to-one. You probably want to go through the compensation detail at a very high level if you are going to go through it, and then let them kind of get back and sit on it for a couple days to even look it through. You don't have to go through it in detail. They don't have to give you an answer right away. You want them to take it away and really think through. But the best part about kind of doing it in person and really just having them hearing them on the phone is you can tell by their level of excitement whether they're really excited and they're going to look it through and they're going to get back to you, or sometimes right away you'll know that they'll have questions or something that's of concern. And so a lot of times I ask that as well when I present offers is, if I'm hearing something, I'm like, is there something that, not sitting well with you? And that's a good way to kind of get an understanding from them right off the bat how they're feeling about the offer. So hopefully by then you make the offer and you've hired someone. And that will be the exciting part, is that you have an acceptance and they're going to be starting in a couple weeks. So in summary, just to wrap up what we talked about today, you decided what you want and who. It's important that you think about your must-haves and nice-to-haves as you walk through this. Posting the position, shortlisting, your interview formats. You're going to pick through the interview types of interview questions that you're going to have. You're going to come up with three things, the three categories on how you're going to assess any of the candidates. You're going to rate the candidates. You're going to pick a top one. Going to get the reference checks and background checks done, make the offer, and there you go. You'll have a successful, hopefully, acceptance of someone new that's going to be on your team. I hope everyone got a good understanding, walking through the process, getting familiar with the types of questions, and then ultimately choosing the right person. And that's sort of the objectives, is that what we can get familiar with as you do recruiting. So that kind of brings me to the end of my session. I would love to keep in touch with everyone. I have a LinkedIn, I've posted it here.